not to toot my own horn, I've been around a long time. My name's Rudy J. Ferretti. You know I've been around a long time. A lot of people do. I've done the high scores. I have some of the highest scores in history on the NES and other systems. I have low scores, high scores. I have the first 0 score in video gaming history on Cliffhanger for the NES. It doesn't matter, you know, if the title is obscure or not. I was the first person to figure out an entire game to calculate a 0 score. So obviously, for somebody to be able to do that and also have the high score on the game and also the fastest time means something. I have, you know, figured out schematics of, you know, how fast a game could possibly be beaten, you know, in my head, not even on pieces of paper. That's what makes me very qualified, but also the aspect of the playing and understanding where the glitches come into play and understanding, you know, what's correct and what's exploiting, you know what I mean? Like, you know, there's always some leeching in a game, but there's a limit, and how do you know that limit? It takes time, it takes experience, learning, studying. You gotta study stuff. You can't just be like, oh, well, I'm just a gamer. Let me just look up the settings. It doesn't work that way. It's a tough one. You know, when I think about that, having three owners. You had the original, then you had one other guy and gal that was running the company, and now you have 2 guys running the company as far as I know. And with that, you know, in a span of 10 years, to have 3 different sets of owners, and, amongst sandbagging and people getting cheated and people you can't find and people that don't own up to their mistakes and, you know, biased against certain gamers and certain people, I think it's a big concern, and to me that's not a legitimate organization. I mean, if a restaurant got bought out 3 different times in the span of 10 years, I definitely would not consider going there eating. It just makes no sense. Late last year, I know that I went there for the Con-Off 2, and one of the new owners said live on stream that first they were going to get rid of the forums, there wasn't going to be no forums, and then they said they were going to bring the forums back because people were complaining. So that went back and forth for a while. Then they said it was going to be, you know, $15 for up to a certain amount of time for a score. Then they changed it live on Twitch, I think it was Twitch. They said that it was going to be $15 no matter how many hours or how many scores you do. So there was so many different promises made, and then they said it was going to be all equal and they would end sandbagging and everything else, and so far all I see is that they hired their best friends back. It's all the same. There's still biased people. There's people there that were there before with the old regime from last time. So I really don't see anything different. All I see is the same old with a new fresh coat of paint on the wall. That's basically it. Well, it's already impacted me. I mean, I've said a long time ago, you know, I thought about getting out of the scene, not because I don't want to play anymore, but because I've always been about the high scores and competing and everything else. And it started to come down to, in my head, that, well, if they're going to charge this kind of money, it's about how rich you are, not about how talented or how skillful you are. I mean, there's not a lot of people that can afford to play, you know, F-Zero per se on the Super NES and do one race, you know, for $25. It's absolutely ludicrous. There's, you know, it's going to affect a lot of things. I'm also concerned of, you know, people that really do have talent and skill are going to end up leaving the scene or having to find another, you know, another outlet to submit scores. It's going to have a huge impact. A lot of people are not going to want to play anymore. I already know several people that are really well known in the community and have lots of high-end scores. It would cost somebody $40,000 just to match one of my friends. $40,000. That's not beating him. That's just tying all his perfect / max out scores that he has on all different systems. $40,000. And then I get told that they don't care. They don't care about the old gamers. They just want to, you know, whoever's going to pay. That's ridiculous. You know, they can do whatever they want. It's their organization. However, yeah, I mean, I would have to say, yeah, I disagree with what they've done. I mean, number one, clacks. Let's face it. It's an, you know, like an off-white on a wall. You know, it's an off Tetris. It's basically like a. I'm trying to think of the word. It's a it's a knockoff of Tetris per se. And I don't know who this gamer is, and when I read the article, it seemed like he didn't really care in the past really about competitive gaming the way that he was saying he does now, and then all of a sudden he submits a score, and I just don't understand. The article didn't even make a lot of sense to me. It was kind of jumbled around. You know, there was different aspects of each part of the article that didn't really make sense to me. Almost like it was fabricated. Of course, when you write something, you're making a story, but it just didn't seem like it was all that true. And it almost seemed like it was a self-promotion for the company. And I actually question if it's even legit for the the purchase of sending his score in at all. I don't know what to say to that one. Well, besides having a lot of world records or scores or even being good at gaming, it goes so much deeper than that. That's what people don't understand. They just think, well, I'm a gamer, I'm qualified to be a ref. I used to think that way too when I was younger. That's not the case. It comes down to a lot of things. You have to know the games inside and out, not just how to beat them or play them, but you have to kind of know where the cheats are and where the glitches are. And the reason you need to know this, you have to exploit it yourself. So now you know how to identify what's going to be on the screen, what they're going to do, when they're going to do it. Because anybody can sit there and watch a tape and say, okay, it's good, put it through. Because you can't tell what a cheat is if you don't know. You can't tell what an emulator is versus a console if you don't have this experience. People say, well, there's no difference. There is a difference when you have the experience and years of gaming and playing. I used to think years ago that it would be so easy to just watch a tape and understand. And there was times where I watched stuff from former refs that they showed me and I couldn't tell it was a glitch. So it takes time. When you're young and you're just starting, you're green. If you're just a world-class video gamer just playing, you're green. It takes time. That's why you have to understand, that's why you have to know how to do the fastest completions, you have to know how to do the low scores and the high scores. You don't have to be perfect at that, but you have to understand that. Well, how did he get the high score? What's allowed? What is the limit of what he's doing with leeching? Where can he go? Where can he go? Where's it going to be easier? How do you judge? It's almost like driving, for the first time. People say, well, how do you know how to brake in front of somebody? Mom and dad used to tell me you judge. It's the same thing with verifying. There's judgments involved. You have to make a judgment call. You can't just assume that it's legitimate because the person flew through a game. That's my opinion on that one. Well, that's been brought up to their attention many times, and it's happened with all three administrations, especially including the current one. You have people that were there before that are not qualified to be referees. You have people there that have all kinds of, personal issues. I'm not going to repeat what, but you can think about that one. And then they hire just anybody. I mean, I've gotten several messages. Oh yeah, Twin Galaxies offered me a job. I'm getting messages from 19, 20, 21-year-old kids that have no experience with refereeing, no understanding of how it works, and just all excited to get a job. And I'm telling them straight up, I'm sorry, buddy, but you're not ready for this. And for them to offer you a job, not knowing your credentials, not knowing your history and who you are, I've got a problem with that. So you want me to pay? You want us to pay you guys for that? So I'm going to pay somebody that has no experience to verify my scores and not knowing if they're legit? And then, of course, people that are against me and biased and everything else, which they've done nothing about, not just myself, but other gamers as well. So basically, history is repeating itself here. You've got the same old favoritism, the same old bias. It hasn't changed. Well, that's a very good question, and I'm going to tell you straight up what that is. I've gone to them about many issues. So have many other people. I don't want to mention their names on camera, but many people have gone to the owners of Twin Galaxies, both in all three and current administrations, and we've told them about the faulty scores in the database. We've told them about possible non-existent players. There's two players that I had an issue with that they didn't submit before, they never submitted afterwards, and nobody knows who they are. They've never shown their face on any forums, any YouTube videos, etc., etc. Two people, two different entities, and there's just been no proof that they're even alive or they exist. So what are we dealing with here? I mean, I'm very concerned about that. I mean, the non-existent, but then also the fraudulent scores that have gone into Guinness, and scores that we also know that cannot be done. They're not possible. It's not about somebody's better than the other. We're talking about scores that just can't be done. The numbers don't add up. It just can't be done. So, and nothing's been done about it. The scores are still in the database. They're being ignored. I just don't understand why. Why is it so hard to get back to people if you're such a professional organization, you have a code of conduct and everything else, you can't even follow it? I'm lost for words on that one. You know, I question both entities on that matter. I mean, you got, number one, several of us have sent many letters to Guinness on more than several occasions, including, you know, within the last decade. And every time we've questioned Guinness, Guinness kept saying, well, we understand, you know, we're monitoring it until we make our decision. But what I don't understand is it's now 10 years later, and I'm kind of getting the same response. So I'm questioning both entities at this point of what legitimate is. I mean, is Guinness going to do something about TG? And is TG going to do something about themselves? I just, you know, nothing against Guinness. Obviously, I've been in their books. I've been, you know, presented and everything else. But I've also seen a lot of hand-picked stuff that's been put in there by referees, both, you know, before and current. So, you know, there's a questioning on both ends. And there really is no answer on either end, because if you question TG, they don't want to tell you nothing. They just be like, oh, thank you for your concerns. We'll get back to you. So basically a John Deere letter every time. With Guinness, I understand they're not going to get back to you right away, but it just doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's been years. Where are the answers? The answers are still, you know, in limbo. Still remains. Well, I see it imploding daily as we speak. I mean, you go on to the site, you can't look up scores, and if you can look up scores, you've got zeros next to your fastest completions, you've got scrambled scores all over the place. Things are not correct. You can't research the scoreboard like you used to. Now the excuse is, well, they're still working on that. Games and settings don't match up properly. There really is no settings. They don't follow their code of conduct. They will allow other people to speak lowly of other people, keep their posts up, but when the other person that's correct says something, they either get banned or their posts get deleted. And you know, I honestly cannot see them lasting another year, especially considering they're ripping everybody off, trying to charge all this money when there's at least 10 other sites out there that will take your scores, regardless if they're going to go to Guinness or not. At least you get some recognition. I mean, all they want is our publicity. They want our press releases, our faces, our cards, our work, our skills and names, and we get nothing, and they get everything. This was a free service just a year ago. There is only one original Rudy J Ferretti. You know, I am the only one. I'm not comparing myself to a portable game system or other initials. Now there might be another RJF out there, but it's not Rudy J Ferretti. You know, I am the one and only. So, original by far. If you find another one, please, I'd like to meet him.